This is the story of how I, a man who had lost everything, found myself bound to a promise made under the full moon, in front of ancestors and enemies alike. What began as pity for a homeless widow turned into a battle for my soul. If you think you know betrayal, wait until you hear what happened to me. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, you won't want to miss the twists coming in the next parts. I was sitting under the old baobab tree when she appeared. The harmattan wind had carried dust into my lungs, but I didn't care. I hadn't eaten since morning, and my mind was too tired to even dream of food. My life had ended months before, when my wife was buried in a coffin I couldn't afford, and my business was swallowed by debts I didn't create. Then I saw her, a small figure wrapped in a faded red kitenge, leaning heavily on a carved walking stick. Her hair was white, her eyes sharper than a machete. She stood in front of me without greeting, without asking who I was. "You are sitting in my shadow," she said. I almost laughed. No one owned shadows. But something about her voice made my skin prickle. I moved aside, yet she didn't pass. "Do you know who I am?" she asked. I shook my head. "I am Mama Zawadi. People think I am a beggar. They are wrong. I am a widow who has buried 3 sons and seen my enemies eat on their graves. I know what it is to be empty, and I know what it is to take back what is stolen." Her gaze locked on mine. "I watched you these last 3 nights, she continued. "You don't sleep. You don't beg. You just wait. Tell me, are you waiting for death, or for a reason to live?" I didn't answer. My throat felt tight. She took a slow step forward. "If I give you a reason to live, will you take it? Even if it costs you your soul?" That night, I followed her into the darkness. The path wound through thorn bushes, past the dry riverbed, until we reached a circle of stones under the moonlight. She set her walking stick down, knelt, and began to hum a song older than the village itself. "You will help me," she said finally. "And I will help you. But once you take this oath, you cannot turn back. Even the ancestors will not forgive you." When I asked what the oath was for, she smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. "To destroy the man who killed my last son." And then, in the moonlight, I realized I knew that man's name. The circle of stones felt colder than the harmattan night itself. The moon was high, and the shadows it cast twisted into shapes I didn't trust. Mama Zawadi reached into her cloth bag and pulled out a calabash filled with dark liquid. The smell hit me first, bitter herbs, ash, and something metallic. "Blood." "Sit," she commanded. I lowered myself onto one of the stones. My heart pounded like the talking drum during a funeral procession. She placed the calabash between us and began to chant in Kikuyu, her voice deep and steady. I didn't understand the words, but the air seemed to thicken with each verse. "You will speak your name," she said, "and the name of the man you swear to destroy." My lips trembled. "My name is Kato," I paused before saying his name, but it slipped out like venom. "Baresa." Her eyes narrowed. "So you know him?" I nodded. "Baresa, once my business partner, now the man who stole my contracts, set fire to my warehouse, and disappeared with the insurance payout. The same man whose name was whispered in connection with her son's death." Mama Zawadi dipped her fingers into the calabash, smeared the liquid across my forehead, and then across her own. "Now, take this stone," she said, handing me a smooth black rock. "It is from the river where my son's body was found. You will keep it until justice is done. Lose it, and the ancestors will turn against you." I took the stone. It was strangely warm, as if it had been lying in the sun. She leaned closer. "There are rules. You cannot speak of this oath to anyone. You cannot show mercy to the one you hunt. And you cannot doubt me, if you do, the oath will punish you." Something in her tone made my stomach twist. "Why me?" I asked. Her lips curved in that dangerous smile again. Because you have nothing left to lose, and because he trusts you more than he fears me. That was when I realized, she didn't just want revenge. She wanted me to be the weapon. 3 days after the oath, Mama Zawadi sent a boy to find me. He couldn't have been more than 12, but his eyes carried the same sharpness as hers. She says, "Come," the boy told me, "and bring the stone." I followed him past the marketplace, where women sold tilapia and roasted maize, past the old railway line, until we reached a crumbling storehouse near the edge of the village. Inside, Mama Zawadi sat on a wooden crate, a bundle wrapped in goat skin at her feet. "You will go to him today," she said without greeting. "Baresa?" She nodded. "He owns a club now, in the city. He calls it Golden Calabash. You will not confront him, yet. You will watch, listen, find his weakness. Every man has one." I frowned. "And if I'm recognized?" She smiled thinly. "He will welcome you. He believes you're still licking your wounds in silence. That is why you will succeed." She untied the goat skin bundle and revealed a necklace made of cowrie shells and a single carved bone. "Wear this," she said. "It will keep your tongue steady and your eyes sharp." I hesitated. "Is it safe?" Her eyes glinted. "Only for the wearer." That evening, I took the dusty road to the city. The club was easy to find, its lights blazed like a shrine to greed. Music thumped from inside, mixing with the smell of grilled meat and cheap perfume. And there he was. Baresa. Laughing loudly at a table surrounded by young men in shiny suits and women whose eyes scanned the room for richer prey. He looked fatter, richer, and untouched by the ghosts of the people he had ruined. When he saw me, his mouth curved into a grin. "Cato," he called, as if we were brothers. "I thought you were dead." "Not yet," I said, forcing a smile. He pulled me into a rough hug. "Come, drink with me. You must tell me where you've been hiding." As the night wore on, I watched him, the way he glanced at his phone and slipped outside every 20 minutes, the way his laughter dimmed whenever a man in a grey agbada entered the room. I couldn't hear what they discussed, but Barasa's shoulders stiffened each time. By midnight, I had learned one thing: Baresa feared that man in the grey agbada more than anything else in that club. When I returned to the village to tell Mama Zawadi, she listened in silence. Then she asked a strange question. "This man in grey, did he have a scar on his left cheek?" I nodded. She looked away, her jaw tight. "Then we have a bigger problem than Baresa." Her voice was almost a whisper. "That man is the one who stood beside my son, the night he died." But as we walked back toward the village, a thought gnawed at me. I had heard rumors about her son's death before, and one rumor said it wasn't Baresa who killed him. It was someone much closer to Mama Zawadi herself. And if that was true, then I had just sworn an oath, against the wrong man. 2 nights later, I went back to the Golden Calabash. Not for Baresa, but to see the man in grey. I didn't wait long. He walked in just after 10, moving with the slow confidence of someone who knew he owned the space. His agbada swayed like a shadow, and the scar on his cheek caught the light when he passed under the bar's neon sign. Baresa saw him and stiffened, quickly excusing himself from the table. They slipped outside. This time, I followed. They stood in the alley behind the club. I kept to the darkness, close enough to catch fragments of their words. "You owe me," the man in grey said, his voice deep, measured. "I told you, I'll pay," Baresa began. "You had no right to touch him that night." Barasa's face darkened. "And you had no right to disappear when things went wrong." The man in grey stepped closer, lowering his voice until I could barely hear. "You're alive because I chose not to finish what she started." Something in my gut twisted. Who was she? Before I could lean closer, the man's head turned, his eyes locked directly on me. "Cato, isn't it?" he said. My blood froze. He began walking toward me, his steps slow but deliberate. Baresa stayed in the alley, watching. When the man reached me, he stopped just a meter away. Up close, I could see the fine embroidery on his agbada, the faint smell of incense clinging to him. "You've been sitting under the widow's tree," he said softly. I didn't answer. "She hasn't told you everything, has she?" He smiled faintly, almost pitying. "Ask her how her son really died, and ask her what was buried with him." Before I could speak, he slipped something into my palm, a small, rusted key. "Keep it," he whispered. "One day, you'll need it more than you need her." Then he walked away, vanishing into the crowd like mist. When I looked back at Baresa, he was gone too. That night, I returned to my small room, sat in the dark, and turned the key over in my hand. My instincts screamed that it was dangerous to keep it, but my curiosity screamed louder. If the man in grey was telling the truth, then I had sworn an oath for a lie, and I was now holding the proof in my palm. I didn't sleep that night. The rusted key lay on my table, glinting faintly in the moonlight like it was waiting for me to choose. By morning, I had decided. I told Mama Zawadi I was going to the city again, but instead I took the back road to the old cemetery, the one no one visited anymore because the elders said the dead there were restless. Her son's grave was there, under the leaning pawpaw tree. The padlock on the small stone crypt was so old it looked like a relic. My hands shook as I slid the key into it. It turned with a groan, like it was waking from a long sleep. Inside, the air smelled of dust and damp earth. I expected bones. Instead, I saw a wooden box about the size of a cooking pot, wrapped in layers of faded cloth. When I unwrapped it, my breath caught. Stacks of money, crisp dollars and naira notes, packed so tight the wood was bulging. On top of the stack was something stranger, a photograph of Mama Zawadi's son, standing beside Baresa. Both were smiling, holding a briefcase between them. In the corner of the photo, barely visible, was the man in grey. I staggered back, my mind racing. This wasn't a murder scene, this was a business partnership. Whatever went wrong, it had been about money, not just blood. And if the money had been hidden in her own son's grave, then Mama Zawadi had known it was there all along. A twig snapped behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. Only the wind in the pawpaw leaves. I rewrapped the box, locked the crypt again, and slipped the photo into my pocket. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I had a choice now, confront her and risk breaking the oath, or keep playing her game until I knew the whole truth. That evening, when I returned, she was sitting outside her hut, shelling groundnuts. She looked up and smiled that slow, dangerous smile. "Did you find what you were looking for?" she asked. I forced my face into calm. "I went nowhere," I lied. Her eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. Only one sentence, spoken softly. "Remember, Cato, the earth hears lies too." 2 days later, Baresa sent for me. Not through the club, not in public, but through a boda rider who found me near the market. "He says it's urgent," the rider told me. "Golden Calabash is too loud for this talk." The address led me to a small roadside bar on the outskirts of the city, far from the glittering chaos of his usual scene. Inside, Baresa sat alone at a corner table, a bottle of palm wine in front of him. "Cato," he said as I sat down. "I should be asking where you've been all these months, but I already know." I kept my expression neutral. "And where's that?" He leaned in. "Under her tree." My fingers tightened on the edge of the table. "You think you're the first she's brought in?" he continued. "You think you're her savior?" "No. You're just the next one she'll use." I said nothing. Baresa took a slow drink, then set the calabash cup down with a hollow thud. "You know how her son died?" I forced myself to meet his eyes. "She told me you killed him." He laughed, not the loud, fake laugh from the club, but something dry and bitter. "Killed him? We were business partners. That man was closer to me than my own blood. We were moving serious money, bigger than anything you've seen. Then he tried to keep a share for himself. Not just from me, from her. I frowned. From Mama Zawadi? He nodded slowly. You think she's some harmless old widow? Ask anyone who knew her in the city 10 years ago. They called her Mama Pesa for a reason. She ran money through hands you wouldn't want to shake. I tried to read his face, but his eyes were steady, almost daring me to doubt him. And the man in gray? I asked carefully. Barasa's lips twitched. He was the one who kept the peace. Until that night. I walked in and found them shouting. Your precious widow had a knife. Her son was already bleeding. The man in gray pulled her off him, but it was too late. My stomach turned. If I wanted him dead, I'd have finished it myself, Baresa said. But she buried more than her son that night. He tapped the table twice, his eyes locking on mine. Tell her I said that. He stood up, dropped some notes on the table for the drink, and walked out. I sat there for a long time, his words replaying in my head. If he was telling the truth, then I was working for the real killer. But if he was lying, why did his story match what I'd seen in that photograph? It was just before dawn when I heard the knock. 3 sharp raps. Too deliberate to be a drunk or a neighbor. When I opened the door, the man in gray stood there. No guards, no driver, just him, his agbada swaying in the chill morning air. You've been busy, he said. I didn't invite him in, but he stepped inside anyway, looking around my small room like he was measuring its silence. She hasn't told you the truth, he began, but Baresa, well, he tells the truth like a fisherman tells the size of his catch. Some truth. Some lies. I crossed my arms. Then you tell me. What really happened? He sat down without asking, folding his agbada neatly. I was there. The argument was about money, yes, but also about loyalty. Her son wanted to cut ties with her. He had found a new partner in Baresa and was ready to walk away. She saw it as betrayal. Words turned to shouts, shouts turned to a knife. I stayed silent, my pulse loud in my ears. She didn't mean to kill him, he continued. But once it was done, she had to hide the reason. So she buried him with the money, knowing it would keep curious hands away. And she told the village Baresa did it. That way, her grief was pure in their eyes, and her power untouched. I stared at him. And you? Why are you telling me this? He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Because I want her finished as much as she wants Baresa gone. But she trusts you. That makes you the perfect knife. My throat felt dry. So what's your offer? He smiled faintly. You bring me the stone she gave you. In exchange, I'll give you proof that clears Baresa and condemns her. Proof that will end her in this village and beyond. I thought of the stone, still wrapped in cloth under my sleeping mat. Of the oath sworn under the moon. What happens if I refuse? I asked. The man's smile didn't fade. Then you'll watch her destroy you the moment you're no longer useful. He stood, smoothed his agbada, and headed for the door. You have 3 days. After that, the offer rots. When he left, the air felt heavier. 3 days to decide, betray the oath, or let the widow use me until the blade turned on my own neck. On the 2nd day after the man in gray's visit, Mama Zawadi sent for me again. Her messenger this time was not a boy, but a tall young man with the kind of eyes that watch without blinking. She says you must come now, he said. I followed him to her compound, where she sat beneath the same baobab tree where we'd first met. A small wooden bowl sat in front of her, filled with water so still it looked like black glass. You've been restless, Cato, she said without looking up. Restless men make mistakes. I swallowed. I've just been thinking. She dipped her finger in the water, drawing slow circles. Thinking is good. But too much thinking, it makes the tongue heavy and the feet slow. Then she looked up at me, her eyes catching mine like a hook. I want you to do something for me. A test. What kind of test? She pointed toward the hills beyond the market. There's a man named Muley who sells charms there. He supplies baresa. Bring me the amulet he keeps around his neck. Bring it without paying, without asking, without him knowing. I frowned. You want me to steal from him? She smiled faintly. I want you to prove you can walk in the shadow without leaving footprints. Her tone made it clear, refusal wasn't an option. By sunset, I was on the narrow path to Muley's hut. He was an old herbalist with quick hands and a quicker tongue, known for selling charms to anyone who could pay. When I arrived, he greeted me warmly, offering palm wine. I forced a smile, waiting for the right moment. The amulet hung from his neck, carved from a single piece of bone, polished smooth. He kept touching it when he talked, like it was more valuable than gold. When he stepped into the back room to fetch a jar of dried roots, I moved. Quiet as the shadow of a hawk, I slipped the cord over my fingers, stuffed it into my pocket, and left the hut without a sound. By the time he returned, I was already halfway down the hill. When I handed the amulet to Mama Zawadi, she held it for a long time, running her fingers over the bone. Then she looked at me, her expression unreadable. You did well, she said finally. Now I know you can take what is not yours, when the cause demands it. She placed the amulet in her cloth bag, then added, almost casually, Muley will be found dead before morning. And if you feel guilt, swallow it. Guilt is for those who still have clean hands. Her words chilled me more than the evening wind. Because I realized this was not a test of skill. It was a test to see if I could kill, even without knowing it. Muley's death hit the village like the first clap of thunder before a storm. They found him at dawn, slumped over his workbench, his eyes open but empty. No wounds, no blood. Just, gone. Whispers spread fast. Some said it was poison. Others said the ancestors had finally called him. But in the market, I caught the knowing glances, the kind that avoided meeting my eyes for too long. That afternoon, as I walked back from buying cassava flour, a black car rolled up beside me. The tinted window lowered, and the man in gray leaned out. Get in, he said. Inside, the air smelled of leather and faint incense. He didn't waste time. I hear you passed her little test. I stayed silent. He smirked. You know what it means, don't you? You didn't just steal for her. You took part in a ritual killing. That amulet you stole, it was the last charm Muley had protecting him. Without it, he was meat for the spirits she sent in the night. My stomach tightened. Why are you telling me this? Because now you're tied to her in blood, he said sharply. If she falls, you fall. That's how she works. Make sure no one can walk away clean. He leaned closer. But I can still cut you loose. Bring me the stone she gave you, and I'll bury your name so deep in this matter no one will find it. I looked out the window, watching the dusty road roll past. And if I say no? Then start digging your own grave, he said flatly. The car slowed. He opened the door. 3 days are over tomorrow, Cato. After that, you're hers forever, whether you like it or not. When I stepped out, the wind felt heavier, almost choking. That night, I sat alone with the stone wrapped in its cloth. My fingers itched to throw it into the river and be done. But I could almost feel the oath pulsing through it, and I wondered if the man in gray was right. Maybe I was already too deep to get out alive. The next morning, a rooster's crow hadn't even finished when I heard Mama Zawadi's voice outside my hut. Cato, she called, low but firm. Come. I stepped out, the stone still in my pocket, my mind still tangled in the man in gray's warning. She was dressed in black from head to toe, not her usual faded wraps, but a clean, tight headscarf and a cloak that seemed to drink in the light. Her walking stick was gone. In its place, she held a short spear tipped with polished iron. "It ends tonight," she said. "What does?" I asked, though I already knew. "Barasa's breath." I hesitated. "Why now?" Her eyes hardened. "He's grown careless. The man in gray is circling him like a vulture, waiting to take the scraps. I will not share revenge." She handed me a small pouch made from animal hide. It was warm in my palm. "You will enter his club before midnight. You will pour this powder into his drink. He will not make it to sunrise." I opened the pouch slightly. The scent burned my nostrils, sharp and metallic. "And if I refuse?" I asked quietly. She smiled without humor. "Refusal is not in the oath." We walked in silence to the main road, where a lorry driver she'd arranged was waiting to take me to the city. Before I climbed in, she gripped my arm. "Kato, remember, his death is not just mine. It is yours too. Without it, your own spirit will rot." The drive felt longer than it should have. My mind kept replaying Barasa's bitter laugh, the photograph from the grave, the man in gray's offer. By the time I reached the city, the pouch felt heavier than a bag of stones. At the Golden Calabash, Baresa greeted me like an old friend again. "Kato. You're becoming a regular. Tonight we drink well." I sat across from him, my hand brushing the pouch in my pocket. The music pounded. Laughter swirled around us. And then, as if the night wanted to test me, the man in gray appeared in the doorway. Our eyes met. He gave the smallest shake of his head, almost unnoticeable to anyone else. Baresa waved for more drinks. My fingers trembled on the table. I realized in that moment, whichever choice I made tonight, someone was going to die. The club's lights were dim, the air thick with sweat and the smell of grilled meat from the street vendors outside. Baresa leaned back, laughing at something one of his friends said, while I stared at the untouched glass in front of him. My fingers brushed the pouch in my pocket. The man in gray was still by the door, watching like a hawk. His head tilted, a silent warning. Baresa waved at the waitress, a young woman in bright ankara with a tray of fresh drinks. She set a glass in front of him and another in front of me. "Drink with me, Kato," Baresa said. "Like old times." I forced a smile and reached for my glass. My palm was damp. The pouch burned against my thigh. The music swelled. Laughter rose. I waited for the moment his eyes left the table, then slid the powder into his drink with a flick of my fingers. It dissolved instantly, leaving no trace. Before he could touch it, a man from another table, drunk, grinning, staggered over. "Baresa. My brother," he shouted, grabbing the glass. "You never drink with me anymore." Before I could react, he raised it to his lips and swallowed half in one gulp. I froze. The man in gray took one step forward, his eyes narrowing. Baresa laughed and clapped the drunk on the back. "You'll finish it for me, eh?" The drunk nodded and drained the rest. Within minutes, his laughter turned into coughing, then choking. People screamed. Chairs scraped. Someone shouted for water. Baresa jumped up, shouting for help, but it was too late. The man collapsed, his body convulsing. In the chaos, the man in gray moved to my side. His voice was cold. "Congratulations, Kato. You've just killed the wrong man." He slipped something into my pocket, a folded piece of paper, and vanished into the panicked crowd. Baresa was shouting for the police now. My heartbeat roared in my ears. I pushed through the bodies and into the street, lungs burning. Only when I reached the dark alley did I open the paper. Inside was a single sentence, written in precise handwriting. "Meet me where the river bends. Bring the stone." Midnight tomorrow. The night air carried the smell of wet earth as I made my way to the river bend. The moon was only a thin curve, barely enough light to guide me. The stone from Mama Zawadi's oath weighed heavy in my pocket, as if it knew tonight was a betrayal. When I reached the bend, the man in gray was already there, standing by the water. No guards. No lantern. Just him and the dark. "You came," he said. "I didn't have a choice," I replied. He gestured toward the river. "This is where her son's blood mixed with the earth. She thinks the spirits here serve her, but they serve the truth." He extended his hand. "The stone." I hesitated. "What will you do with it?" His eyes were steady. "Break it. End the oath. Free you from her chains. Once it's broken, she'll lose her hold on you, and she'll know you've chosen a side." I pulled the cloth from my pocket and unwrapped the stone. In the pale light, its black surface seemed to drink the moon. My fingers trembled. "Before I give it to you," I said, "tell me something. Who really killed her son?" He didn't flinch. "She struck the blow. Baresa covered it up. I buried the truth. We each had something to lose. Why protect her?" His jaw tightened. "Because at the time, she still had power. Power to ruin more than just me. But now she's slipping." I handed him the stone. He took it gently, then raised it over a flat rock. "You understand," he said, "once I break this, you are no longer bound. But you are also marked. She will come for you." The stone shattered with a single strike. A strange gust swept through the trees, cold and sharp, as if the river itself had sighed. The man in gray met my eyes. "It's done. Tomorrow, you'll see her for what she really is." As I turned to leave, he called after me. "Cato, choose carefully how you face her. She's most dangerous when she knows she's lost." I walked away with the broken pieces wrapped in cloth. And in the pit of my stomach, I knew, the next time I saw Mama Zawadi, only one of us would walk away alive. By midday the next day, the village already felt different. People avoided my eyes in the market. Children stopped their games when I passed. Even the goats seemed to keep their distance. Mama Zawadi knew. I found her waiting for me under the baobab tree, her walking stick back in hand, her head wrapped in deep red. The color of war. "You've been to the river," she said without question. I kept my voice steady. "I've been many places." Her eyes narrowed. "The ancestors told me your oath is broken. Do you think that frees you from me?" "I think it frees me from lies." Her lips curled into something between a smile and a snarl. "You think you've chosen the right side? Cato, I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. The man in gray will use you, then bury you in the same ground he buried my son's truth." She stood slowly, leaning on her stick. "So, we will see whose spirits are stronger." That night, as I returned to my hut, I saw it, a small clay pot placed in the center of my doorway, covered with white chalk markings. Flies buzzed around it, though it held no food. I knew enough to recognize a cursed vessel. From the shadows, a voice whispered, "Step over it, and you belong to her again." The man in gray emerged from the darkness. "She's marked your home. Next comes your blood." Before I could reply, a shout tore through the night, from the far side of the village. We ran toward it and found the herbalist's widow wailing in the street. A goat, its throat slit, lay on her doorstep. The man in gray's face was grim. "She's calling the spirits for war. And you, Cato, are her first target." Back at my hut, the clay pot was gone. In its place was a strip of cloth from my own shirt, the one I'd worn the night of the oath, tied in a knot and smeared with something dark. Blood. It began that night. A heat under my skin, starting in my chest and spreading outward, as if my blood had caught fire. My hands trembled without reason. My tongue felt heavy, my breath shallow. I stumbled outside into the cool air, hoping it would ease, but the heat only grew. My vision blurred, and for a moment the ground beneath me seemed to tilt like a boat on rough water. From the darkness, the man in gray appeared. "She started the binding," he said sharply. "The blood she took will let her twist your body against you." "How do I stop it?" I gasped. "You can't stop it," he said, "but you can return it. We need to take something from her, something she's bound her own spirit to. Break that, and the curse will weaken." "What?" He hesitated. "Her son's grave." My stomach nodded. "The money. The photograph. And more," he said. "She keeps something else there. Something older. That's why she watches it so closely." The heat surged, making me drop to my knees. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I could almost hear her voice, soft and mocking, "You are mine, Cato." The man in gray knelt beside me. "You have until sunrise before the binding becomes permanent." I forced myself to stand. "Then we move now." We made for the old cemetery, every step feeling heavier than the last. By the time we reached the pawpaw tree, my legs shook, and black spots clouded my vision. The man in gray smashed the lock with a rock and pulled the wooden box into the open. Inside, beneath the money and the photograph, was a small carved idol, its surface blackened with age and oil. "This is it," he said. "Her life is tied to this as much as to her own blood." He raised it to smash, but a voice cut through the night. "Put it down, or neither of you will leave this place alive." Mama Zawadi stepped from the shadows, spear in hand, eyes burning brighter than the moon. Mama Zawadi's spear glinted in the moonlight, its tip steady despite her age. "You've taken enough from me, Cato," she said, her voice calm but razor-sharp. "Now you come for the last thing I have left." My chest burned, my knees threatening to buckle. The man in gray kept the idol in his hands, his eyes locked on hers. "You took your son's life," he said evenly. "Now you want his death to bind another." Her jaw tightened. "I took nothing that wasn't mine. My son forgot who fed him, who built his path from dust to gold. Loyalty is blood, and when blood turns against you, you spill it before it spills you." Her gaze slid to me. "And you, Cato, you were supposed to understand that. You swore an oath. You chose to betray it." The man in gray stepped forward. "This ends now." In a blur, she lunged, the spear striking toward his chest. He dodged, the idol slipping from his hands. It landed in the dirt between us. Without thinking, I grabbed it. The heat in my chest surged, a scream building in my skull. I knew, this was the heart of the curse. Mama Zawadi's voice cut through the pounding in my head. "Give it to me, and I'll end your pain. Give it to him, and you'll die before dawn." The man in gray's voice followed, low and urgent. "Break it, Cato. Now." For a heartbeat, I stood frozen, both of them watching, waiting. My vision blurred to a tunnel. Then I slammed the idol against the stone marker. Once. Twice. It cracked on the third blow. A sound like a rush of wind burst from it, and the heat in my body vanished, leaving me gasping in the cold night air. Mama Zawadi staggered, dropping her spear. Her eyes widened, not in pain, but in disbelief. "You don't know," she whispered, before collapsing to the ground, motionless. The man in gray looked at her for a long moment, then at me. "You freed yourself. But you'll never truly be clean. Remember that." We buried the remains of the idol by the river bend before sunrise. When I returned to the village, no one asked where Mama Zawadi had gone. By evening, her hut was already empty, her shadow gone from under the baobab tree. And yet, sometimes, at night, I feel the wind shift, and I swear I hear her voice again. "Oaths are not so easily broken, Cato."